to TN Talk, everyone. My name is Leslie Thompson. I am Director of Adult Programs at the Sid Richardson Museum. And before we get going, I actually want to begin with how I start all of our adult programs at the Sid, which is what's known as a land acknowledgement. And for those who are unfamiliar, a land acknowledgement pays tribute to the original inhabitants of the land that we're currently on. So we, the Sid Richardson Museum, respectfully acknowledge all Native American peoples who've lived on this land since time immemorial. And the Sid would especially like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Wichita and affiliated tribes upon whose historical homeland our museum is located. So today, in addition to members of the Sid staff, we have a special guest with us today. So I'm going to go in order of my screen and introduce each of them to you. So when I see your name, just do a quick wave. So above me, I've got Shelby Orr, who is Director of School and Family Programs. Then below me, I've got Anna Smith, who is our guest today. She is Curator of Education at the Nasher Sculpture Center over in Dallas. Then we've got Scott Winterroad, who is our Director at the Sid Richardson Museum. Then we've got Betsy Thomas, who is Director of Education Resources. And then we've got Renee Green, who is our Admin Assistant at the Sid. And then you can't see on my screen, but she'll pop up later because I can't fit everyone on here. But Janie Cumming is our Guest Services Manager at the Sid Richardson Museum. So thank y'all for coming out online this morning for our Tea and Talk program. And for those who are not familiar with Tea and Talk, this is a program that we host at the Sid that's really kind of an opportunity to slow down the art viewing process. And I like to think of it as like a visual deep dive through a conversation of shared observations. Studies have shown that when visitors are at a museum, they spend on average 10 to maybe 15 seconds with the work of art. And that's really not a lot of time to take in all the details. So normally our program in person allows for about half an hour. But for the sake for the virtual experience today, we're gonna keep it at 10 minutes. And I have on the screen with us an image of a painting from our collection. And I want to remind everyone, while it is wonderful that we have technology to allow us to see paintings digitally, it is obviously not as good as the real thing, especially sculpture, at the Nasher Sculpture Center. To see works in the round, it's such a different experience than looking at a flat screen. So when you do have an opportunity to go to an art museum and see art in person, I recommend that you do so. But for today, obviously, for these purposes, we're going to be using the next best thing. So with that said, I'm actually going to go ahead and set my timer. And let's take a look at this painting together. I'm going to refrain from sharing the artist title and date until after our conversation, just so as to not influence our looking. But yeah, as you're looking at this painting, share something that you notice.
One of the most striking things to me is the color palette. It's so sophisticated. There's that really attractive, warm yellow that draws you to the center. And then at first, everything else seems like this kind of brownish gray, but there's this beautiful, like, sort of barely there blue in the sky and a blush of red under some of the figures representing like a blanket or some sort of fabric.
Yeah. So Anna's noticing the vibrance of the colors, and there's so many different colors in what seems like a very monotone painting. Yeah. What else do you notice? I'm noticing, it's a nighttime painting. It's very dark, but as Anna pointed out, there's this yellow that you can kind of see glowing onto some of the figures in the foreground, but I'm also seeing that little fire in the background, in that shelter back there, and it makes me really curious about that.
Yeah, while you were introducing, I kept looking at that fire, and then I hadn't noticed those little, what they call Orno ovens, there's two ovens back there with little openings on either side of where the fire is.
Oh,
there are.
I've never noticed that before.
I haven't either.
There's just that suggestion of maybe the brick, just like very loosely sketched in.
Yeah. Okay. So Scott, you're saying that there's some ovens back there with that little fire in that shelter?
Yeah, on either side, they're large.
Oh.
The adobe ovens, those little conical shape with the little opening at the bottom.
Yeah.
I whenever you were talking, I kept looking back there at that little fire because the light is so distinctive, and it's something I've always noticed in this picture. But it also draws me to that whole structure in the background, which I hadn't paid attention to before.
Mm-hmm.
And I apologize. See, here I'm going to go off on the fact that I look at these all the time, but it's funny because that structure is similar to other structures we see in Remington paintings. Oops, and I've now said who the artist is. But
Okay.
but it's interesting because that I hadn't really paid much attention to the background, because the middle ground is, or the center of the painting is always where my attention is focused. So it's a different observation this morning.
That's so interesting. So I'm just now, like, as you were explaining it, I'm now seeing the structures that you're talking about. In the background, there's these two like dome-like structures on either side of the fire. And then you can see like that dark little opening in the front of each one. I hadn't even like been able to decipher what the structures were. So thank you for pointing that out.
I'm cheating too because I'm looking at the book. So.
Yeah, book helps. This is why you need to see the art in person, people. Okay, what else?
I'm really drawn to, I mean, this is such an arresting painting because there's like a sense of importance or urgency. You know, these figures are, it's almost like ceremonial. They're meeting together. It's nighttime. They're not going to be disturbed. What they talk about looks like it's very intense. This man's mouth is open, but he's not looking at the other people. So I don't know, there's just there's such a seriousness to the tone.
Yeah.
Something I've never noticed before, actually all of their mouths are open as if they're singing or chanting. I've never noticed that before.
I hadn't either.
Yeah.
Bad either. And that the one person is wearing, it looks like a blanket, but nobody else is.
Mm-hmm.
Over there on
And
the
he's
left.
set apart a little bit, yeah. I also, just from I really always like their boots, because I've never seen in our collection like footwear that looks like that.
I never noticed the boots before.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever noticed that either.
I feel like you can really imagine the sound in this painting if their mouths are open and they're singing or talking or chanting. But their level of, like, they're mostly lightly dressed, so you can kind of imagine this is a warmer evening, and you can imagine the night sounds and the crackle of the fire. So there's this sort of missing element of sound almost when you look at the painting.
I just got chill bumps when you were describing that, and I was looking at the paintings, or the painting.
It's interesting. It's quiet, but it's got this noise level too. It's kind of at the same time back and forth. I was thinking, you know, it seems very still and quiet, but you'd hear the fire, you'd hear the whatever they're speaking or what they're saying, chanting. So it's interesting. It's got this kind of interesting tension that, I don't know, there's something contemplative about what's happening here too.
I like that word, yeah.
And the artist...
Go ahead, Anna.
Oh, sorry. The artist has placed himself and us as a viewer as an outsider to the circle too. That's not an open circle where we're of this moment. It's something where this person's back is to us. They're not paying attention to us. We're sort of observing this from a distant sort of perspective.
Yeah, not fellow participants, but witnesses.
Yeah, not physically distant, but emotionally distant perhaps, like we're not part of what's happening.
Yeah, but the eye level too is like we're also crouching or sitting as the viewer, which is really neat.
Yeah. What else do you notice?
I'm going to go out on the limb and talk about the structure. I knew there was a structure in this picture, this painting, but I never really focused on it before. It almost, in a sense, and of course I just saw the domes that Scott was talking about, but to the left, the structure itself, it's obviously not teepees. It if you look at it in a certain light, and I can't seem to get, you know how you look at something and you see it one way and you can't quite see it another way, it almost looks like a modern structure to me. I know this sounds crazy, but I know that's a post with, or I assume it's a post with the opening in the structure.
In the middle.
But it's like I can't help but get past the sliding door, glass door. I mean, it's definitely not teepee, so it's a little more contemporary.
Well, Renee, if those are those Orno ovens, that's adobe usually. So
right.
This is some sort of an adobe kind of structure, is what I would assume.
Yeah.
It's more southwestern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So you're saying like the flat roof and just kind of like the geometry of the building kind of reminds you of modern architecture.
It does, and I keep going again and again. What time period? My mind keeps wondering what time period this is. Shelby pointed out the boots. I never really have noticed those. And we have the ovens and we have different things, but yet they're very sparsely clothed. And so I don't know. It's just it just deepens the mystery for me.
Yeah. What else do you notice?
I'm interested in these clay vessels that are near some of the figures and the placement of those and what purpose those might serve as part of this gathering.
Yeah, I noticed I'd always seen that pot in the middle foreground, but the pot to the left, or to the gentleman on the left, actually I'd never noticed that one before. I didn't realize there were two.
I think that's a pot, right?
Yes, it is. And I have never seen the other pot before either.
Yes, this is why we look at art.
Yeah, I've always wondered if it actually plays a purpose or if it's like an artistic technique or.
It is one of Remington's pots that he likes to put in there.
Because it's in another painting in our collection.
Yeah.
The one in the front. Yeah. So that's really funny.
I noticed something, I can't remember who pointed out the robed man right here. And then of course we have this circle, but directly across from him is this man who doesn't have a headband on. So that makes me wonder if they are singing or if they are discussing something, if that has significance.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't see that before.
And of course, you see the stars in the sky, which draws you up, which is beautiful. So there might be some wispy clouds, but otherwise it looks, if you can see the stars, it's a pretty clear night. I think that's really, I love that. I think that's really beautiful. My eye always goes up towards those stars.
Yeah.
It's kind of lit up there by the smoke too. That line of the white is very distinctive in the composition. I keep looking at that too, and at how it breaks up the structure that's in the background.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah. Well, we've reached our 10 minutes. I hate to cut off our conversation, but we've actually met our time. And so even 10 minutes is not enough time to really look at one work of art.
Will you tell us about it, Leslie?
I will.
Okay.
Thank you for asking, Shelby. So this painting, as we pointed out, is by Frederic Remington, one of the staple artists in our collection, but it is called Apache Medicine Song, and it's from 1908, which is just a year before Remington died. So this is actually considered part of his later work, as he's starting to do more nocturnes, more night paintings, and really kind of loosen up his brushwork and play with his palette a little more. And this is one of several nocturnes that we have in our collection, and I'm really glad we got a chance to look at it today, because it is really beautiful. And when the museum reopens, I hope that people will come and see the painting in person, because it is a different experience. The colors are different, and even though it's a night painting, it really pops, different than how you see it on the screen. So consider this a teaser of what you might be able to experience in person. And while we are ending the conversation, for us, I would love to continue the conversation with you all. If there's something else that you're noticing in this painting or something that you're responding to that we've shared so far, please leave it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. But otherwise, thank y'all for joining us for Tea and Talk today.
Thank
Bye, y'all.
you. Bye.